Thanks, Jim. All right, well, I'll wait till they see the recording and then we'll get started.
It should be.
There it is, great. Okay, welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting of 31 March. I wanted to welcome a number of public or town officials, including select board member, who did I see on there? Sorry, Aaron Underhill. Thank you very much. Several other town officials, including Mike Kaczynski. Let's see, I saw Chris Fogarty, Mr. Mullaney, Superintendent, and John Barry, who's going to be our first up speaker, Terry Wiggin. Thank you very much. And so we've got a full agenda tonight and we'll get right into it. So the Capital Planning Committee is going to make its presentation and share with us its report for this budget cycle. So John, floor is yours.
All right, great. Thank you, Pete. And thanks everybody for having me here tonight. Hopefully you all got the report. The Capital Planning Committee met last night to finalize the report, which should be in your package. Unfortunately, I can't share that. I don't know if you want to put it up.
Are we supposed to?
John, do you recommend the memo or the master summary document?
I want to start with the memo, and then I can do a quick review of the master list the second. So yes, let's start with the memo.
Okay.
All right. So hopefully this looks familiar because it's a similar format to the memo that we've used for the past several town meetings, and this will get published as an addendum to the Finance Committee report, which will be sent out in advance of the town meeting. So just to give you a little overview of the process, so we've been meeting as a committee for the past few months. All of the various departments around town provided us with their capital requests for this upcoming cycle. For the most part, these are requests that we already had in our capital planning list, which is good. That's sort of showing that the process has been working, that people we're starting to really begin to see into the future a bit. So most of the requests we see are not surprises. So for example, you'll see there's a request for an ambulance on there from the fire department. There's a request for a police car on there from the police department. Some equipment for the town hall, things like that. These are all things we've known about. So that's great. I think just that in of itself is huge progress, because if you went back 3 or 4 years, people had really no idea when some of these things were going to come up for to be needed. So we've gone through our process. We have a ranking process that we've established over the past couple of years. We refine it a bit each time we go through it. And we ranked the various projects that have been put forth to us and tried to group them. And I know I've said this before at prior committee meetings, but I'll say it again. The ranking process is a bit of a necessary evil. All of these things are important things. So just because something got the lowest, in the lowest category of ranking doesn't mean we don't think it's an important thing. We don't think it's a thing that the town needs. So I just want to stress that, but it's just that there were other things that were more pressing and more urgent for various reasons, whether it was a regulatory mandate or a public safety issue or something of that nature. So on the chart on the first page of the memo, you'll see a table there in the front. There were 18 projects that we looked at this time around, totaling about a little bit over $2.3 million. 8 of them fell into the highest priority category, then 5 in the middle priority category and 5 in the lower priority category. There's details. You may want to just flip to the third page, which has a breakdown of the various projects there. So I'll just briefly go over some of the big ones, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with these already from other discussions you've had, but the committee ranked these 8 as the highest priority. So obviously the PFAS issue is a critical issue for the town to try to get that resolved. And so there's sort of 3 items related to PFAS remediation there, all related to design, beginning design process of new water treatment plants for wells, either for the DeAngelis well or DeAngelis treatment plant or the wells 3 through 6. Fortunately, there was some public or state funding rather that was available for that. But you see those three together total about roughly $650,000. Those are really critical items. They were, frankly, they were off the charts for our priority ranking process because of the critical nature of that PFAS issue that we're dealing with. Some of the other ones there were the ambulance. So the fire department does need to replace one of the ambulances. It's kind of come up on its useful life. So we thought that was a very high priority. 2 special education vans for the school, also kind of nearing the end of their useful life. And actually, I believe one van has to be taken out of service, which also kind of exacerbated the need for that. There's a water systems emergency response plan update. That is a mandated item from the state, so that hit the higher priority group. Fire alarm replacement for the memorial building, again, the critical safety issue there. And then some stormwater upgrades for Village and Birch Street. These have actually been on our list for a couple of years. And I think the DPW had delayed this project a couple of times, but it finally, I think it's at a point where it really needs to get done. There's some recurring issues there with flooding around that Village Birch Street area. So those were the highest priorities. Again, you'll see in the middle category, new police car. I will say the chief has done a great job at laying out all the cars. He's got a schedule that he's been following pretty precisely to get those cars rotated through. So that was in our medium priority. Council of Aging, a couple of items. One was in the middle priority, a couple were in the lower. Updating the kitchen that needed a new refrigerator, and we needed a stove too, if I remember correctly. Some iPad for the assessor's office and some software that's to keep track of the various tax assessments for homes, and then a couple of school items you see there. And then finally, I'll just quickly on the lower priorities, skid steer for the school, a handicap van for the COA, some flooring for the memorial building, the Council on Aging room, and a smaller vehicle to drive people around from the COA, and then a new filing system for the building department. So a lot there for sure. And I know with this budget go around, there's very little free cash available. So we just got a glance at the draft warrant last night. So only a couple of these items are going to make it onto the warrant. I believe the PFAS design items and the emergency response plan and the Village and Birch Street upgrades, I believe are the only ones, so that I might be missing something there that are making onto this upcoming warrant. So let me just pause there before I jump over to the other part of the report. I'm happy to take any questions about the process, or just what some more thinking might have been for any of these projects.
I'll just add a quick comment, or because I'm on the committee, I'm aware, but I wanted to have a little bit of discussion amongst the other members, and that is that the PFAS construction is not included, although it's certainly out there and probably the most pressing of needs, and it is described in the document, I think up on page 1 towards the bottom. Those needs are coming. Obviously, they'll likely be funded out of the enterprise funds, perhaps with some state funding as well, as I know that the select board has communicated with state officials, but that construction cost is not included in the table. So I just want you to know that it has been discussed. We're certainly aware of it. And with that, I'll take your questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Just the comment that many of these or most of these won't make it onto the warrant. Is the intent again just to put the items that the select board believes we have funding on the warrant, or will there be other items that can be, and I know Mike can't speak for the select board, but Aaron's here and she can take the message back. Is the decision going to be just to limit it to what the select board thinks needs funding with no other options, or is it going to be to include items such as roads or other things that may be able to be funded if the finance committee and town meeting, more importantly, disagree with the priorities of the select board.
So Craig, as I understand it, you're asking what's going to be on the warrant. And that's definitely a question for Aaron or the select board. I'll let Aaron comment, but you know,
I
this
guess-
report has already been presented to the select board as it's being presented to us now. And then it's up to them to select what they want on it and what we can do to influence that.
Yeah, I guess I was reacting to John's comment about that most of these won't be on the warrant because there are not enough funds in free cash. I didn't know if that was a done deal and decided, or if that's, because I agree, it's the selectmen's purview, but I've always argued that as we started restricting the warrant article to only items that are availably funded in the select board's mind, we take away choices from town meeting. And I'm not saying to put everything on there, but certainly the high and medium priority items that the committee came up with would give options. For instance, I'll give you the example. If we hadn't secured the grant for that first PFAS study until after the warrant was published, we would have had the $100 and whatever $1,000 of funds to use differently. So, so by limiting it until after the warrants, by limiting the choices, we limit the flexibility that town meeting has with the funds. And I know Erin can't answer the question now because she has to bring it up with the rest of the board. I'm not gonna put her on the spot.
Yeah, I may put her on the spot in a second, but I just wanted to say that with only, you know, 400,000 in free cash, I'd have to do the math real quick to figure out which of those are eligible for free cash and which come out of enterprise. But there certainly are, you know, I think what you're saying is, hey, are we going to put 800 to, you know, $1 million plus on the available to be chosen at town meeting? But then you end up potentially with, you know, the debate and the discussion at town meeting. Is that what you're asking?
I'm saying that beyond free cash, there could potentially be available other funds that come up, depending on how much the budgets grow by and all those type of things. So
Yeah.
without knowing how much available other funds we have, I certainly believe the select board and the finance committee should come in with a recommendation that says, this is how much money we have, and these are the 5 items, 3 items, or whatever items we recommend. But if all of a sudden we find out we have another $200,000 of available funds because of budgetary differences or other numbers that, you know, as we decide that maybe we don't agree with the select board's budget and $200,000 becomes available as other available funds. If we don't have that opportunity to spend it on these items or any items, then it basically just reverts to free cash the following year. So that's why I've always liked to see, and not millions of dollars of dream items, you know, but reasonable expansion so that if the finance committee or town meeting disagree with the select board's budget or disagree with the select board's priority, there's a place to spend it other than letting it sit for a year and going to free cash the following year. And that's happened on several occasions. It happened with the War Memorial, where we got a grant to fund it, and we had no place else to spend that $25,000 because there was no other item left on the warrant, you know, to spend that money on.
I'm certainly in favor of providing flexibility at town meeting for there to be, if there's additional funds that become available during, you know, the budget cycle, or that would be able to execute those. I think the mechanics of that are motions for amendments to warrant articles at the time of town meeting, and whether or not this entire list of projects, you know, the 18 projects, is all on. We have done in the past few town meetings, we have included kind of an alternate article, which wasn't necessarily for consideration, it was more for information. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's what you're thinking. How else would you consider adding funding?
Well, and the problem is that we've had is if it's not on the list that goes to the in the warrant, the moderator conceivably could say it's not an item that's open for consideration because it hasn't been publicly, and Erin can speak better about moderators' views of this. That she can speak of because it's not with her board. But if it's not included in the warrant, would the moderator allow, suppose we just take the first go down to the bus replacement just to grab it. Yeah, go down to the bus replacement, which would be the 1,000,009 plus the 264. And the first three articles are funded out of enterprise funds. So that drops us to a lower amount. DPW stormwater would be funded out of stormwater funds. So conceivably, you know, you're looking 350 for, call that five.
You probably got 600,
Yeah.
650.
Yeah. So if there's
maybe
650,
of stuff that's not enterprise related.
if there's 650 and free cash is 450, and the select board limits it to just free cash and doesn't use any other available funds, that means there's $200,000 ish of
Yeah.
projects
Yeah, I
that-
understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but if they're not listed, and let's just say it's going to be the school, the Apple computer and bus that we don't recommend just because they're on the bottom of the list. And I know that's not prioritized, but I'm just saying for ease of convenience, they're right there at the bottom. We can't include those at the last minute if they're not on the list. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying put everything
Right.
on in the world. And I'd always include a road article too, because if there's available funds, I'd like to see roads fund as an option to fund, but that's a bias, you know?
Yep. Oh, understand. Okay. Well, the last thing I'll add before I would ask, I'm going to ask Erin if she would like to comment. But I would say that this would be a potentially a good topic for a potential tri-board meeting that may happen between now and town meeting, because we discussed it a little bit last night. You know, there are some I'm in favor of having that. I think any opportunity that we get to have the three large committees or bodies, you know, talking at the same time, potentially collaborating, is a good opportunity not to be wasted, provided that we have an agenda and we can keep it efficient. So anyway, that's a potential topic for sure. So that said, Erin, would you like to comment?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions for Erin that maybe you could conclude in it, Kathy McInnes.
Let me just go with her and then I'll
Okay.
come back to you. And if they go to her, that's so be it.
Okay, I will concur with what Craig said about the moderator piece of this and adding something that isn't on the warrant, because the warrant is serving as a warning for all the townspeople to know what will be discussed, and they wouldn't have proper warning if it wasn't there. So I mean, of course, how the meeting is run is up to the moderator, but I would agree with that. In terms of, I mean, the warrant's not finalized yet. You know, I do have a draft I'm looking at. I'm not sure how much I should really speak to that, but I will certainly bring back these thoughts in terms of having other options available should we have a last minute extra money or whatnot from Craig's examples. And that's something I can bring back to the board.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering if something like a large ticket item like a $350,000 ambulance replacement, if that should be put on as an article. It's an awful large sum of money for 7-8 people to consider spending on. And I think it would be valuable for the participants of the town meeting to be included in a discussion like this. So I was wondering if Erin would consider bringing that back to the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board.
Kathy, when you say it's a large sum of money to be considered by a body of 7 or so people, who do you mean specifically?
Well, I think the Select Board, the Capital Planning Committee, the Fire Chief, and surely not the FinCom. Is my question confusing, Mr. Chair?
Well, I think, yeah, because I think the answer is regardless of who considers it, it will be, if it gets approved, it would be voted on at town meeting regardless, one way or another.
Will it be a
So-
separate warrant article, Mr. Chair?
That's up to the select board.
That's why I asked, Mr. Chair. And
Okay.
also, if I might mention, I think this list is a real, you're doing an inconvenience to the town, because the DPW, 200,000, 255,000, Village Street, 700,000. Those are clearly coming from enterprise funds. So I think they should be removed right out of the cost because it seems like the town is incurring these these charges, and they're clearly not. So it just makes it look like that. Well, you know what I think it looks like. And I would strongly recommend that those be, at least in the comments section, to be put in capital letters, to be paid by enterprise, paid by enterprise, paid by enterprise. So people don't go thinking that the general fund is paying for this, $1 million.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep. I'll just tell you that that issue more or less is to kind of funding source. There's some things that comes out of a tax bill, or whether it comes out of a usage fee like water or sewer bills has been discussed. And a point that was made that's somewhat contrary to that is the analogy is that, if your tax bill, your real estate taxes come out of your left pocket, your water bill and your sewer bill comes out of your right pocket, it's still all taxpayer or resident funding. There are some slight differences, though, that
Oh,
again
Mr.
were
Chair, I
discussed.
don't
at
mean to
Capital Planning
interrupt you.
Committee.
I don't mean to
If I could
interrupt you.
finish, please. If I may finish, please. There are certain people that are not on water. They're not on sewer, so it doesn't affect everybody the same. And so you make a valid point, again, which has been discussed, and we've sought to clarify that, probably not to your satisfaction. So anyway, go ahead, Kathy.
Mr. Chair, I want to say it's not just to my satisfaction, it's to the dissatisfaction of all the people that are paying for water and sewer, and it looks like the town is paying for it. And once and for all these committees have to realize that no, it isn't the left or right pocket. It's the left and right pocket of probably half of the people in town, and all the others are getting a ride on this. So please, if you're gonna do anything that I say, will you please acknowledge that who's going to be paying the bills up front, sir? Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be done, not necessarily on this report, but if the Capital Planning Committee decides to do that for the next go, then I think this report has already been voted on by the committee. I don't know that there's any intent to go back and change it to identify whether it's an enterprise or a coming out of a general fund tax type account. But I understand your feedback. It's feedback, frankly, that has been given and discussed, and this is the report that has been had or has been published by the Capital Planning Committee.
And lastly, Mr. Chair, if unfortunately the Capital Planning Committee had the public meeting, there would have been people that would have brought up issues like this for discussion. So I know it's virtual and whatever, but it would have just been a nice opportunity to have the public speak on behalf of several of these issues. And I'll leave it at that, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Boyardi. Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
Oh, good. I just have a question as to why wouldn't it be beneficial to have it listed so that people were aware, so that it would be more transparent?
Yeah,
I think that's kind of maybe where Kathy's coming from, and I don't want to speak for her, but
Well, again, I don't agree or disagree with Kathy. It's just Kathy's made a point. She's, her point was made by somebody else in the committee. That's not the way that the vote went. It's not the way that the report is written. And that feedback, John Barry, who's chair of the Capital Planning Committee, I'm a member of it. We'll take that back the next time around, and perhaps the report for the next time around will be changed. But this is one report. What we're talking about,
what vote are you referring to?
If
sir?
I could finish, this is one report. If these items end up in the budget, it will be clearly specified as to where the funding is coming from.
Okay.
Nobody's voting on this report. What gets voted on is the warrant.
what vote are you referring to?
I'm referring to the Capital Planning Committee, which voted on this report.
I see.
Mr. Chair, this is John, if I could make.
Go ahead,
just a
John.
few comments. Thank you. Yeah. So, and I do appreciate the feedback from everybody. Two things to say, and one just to echo what you just said, Pete. Anytime something is going to go on the warrant, it'd be very clearly identify where the funding source is from. And frankly, the Capital Planning Committee tries our best to be agnostic about funding source when we're deciding on priority list. So, and sometimes it's not clear what the funding source is for various items. So that's another reason why we tend to not put that down. And second, I do take some umbrage at the comment that these are not public meetings. We've had several meetings. They're all posted. They're all available to the public, and anybody in the public can sit in any one of our capital planning meetings. So anybody's welcome to go to that and make comments and see the process unfold. So I'll just leave it at that.
I'll just pile on by also saying that there are open seats on that committee, and that's part of the report, is contained in the report as well. Any other
Mr. Chair,
comments?
can two people from the FinCom be on one board?
I don't know the answer to that, Kathy. I don't know why not, but I don't know.
Could you get back to me and let me know, please?
Yep, certainly.
Thank you.
I'd like to make one comment too on that. The issue of the funding source, well, I agree with Kathy, it is confusing unless you know it. The select board could easily alleviate that by making it, two articles, one funded by enterprise funds and one funded by general taxation. And then it would be at least more clear in the warrant as to what's funded by what. And my only other thought, the ambulance being borrowing, anytime, and this is just a reminder to all of us, anytime you have a borrowing article in there, it takes a 2/3 majority to pass, not just a simple majority. So I don't think the ambulance is highly controversial, but as we add other borrowing items that may or may not be highly controversial, it might make sense to consider splitting them out as well when it's formulated on the warrant, not necessarily from the committee. I could take what the committee gave and use this fine as a recommendation, but if the select board puts it into two articles that show enterprise and operations, then it would be quite clear to the voters at town meeting what's coming out of what.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please, Mike.
Thank you. I was going to take this up when the committee discussed the draft warrant, but since it's being brought up here, I just wanted to touch upon it. Article 15 is the capital article, which contains all the capital items that don't require special authorization because of borrowing or so forth. But it does note on the departments, the articles, the items that are funded. It does note water enterprise fund against the items that are funded through the enterprise fund. So I just want to note that, and we can certainly talk about that more when we get to that article, but I just wanted to note that the article does show or indicate that the department is the water enterprise fund. So, we can talk about whether there's a better way to show that, but it is there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
Pete, it's John again. If there is no comment, I do want to just maybe give a quick overview of the larger schedule in the back.
Please do.
Okay. All right. So there is, and I don't know, Deirdre, if you can maybe put that one up there, the one that looks like more like a spreadsheet. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So hopefully this is starting to look familiar. This is the second time we've done this. So we had one last year. This is the updated version of this. And this is definitely a living document that will continue to evolve. So I'll draw your attention to the bottom right corner, because that's sort of the headline. You could just sort of, I can't tell if you're there. My screen's so small.
There, John, go ahead.
There we go. So $73.2 million. That's the total of all the capital items that the capital committee has identified as of this point. And I will note that is up significantly from our report last year. Last year, we had a number of $54.6 million, and this is noted in the memo that addresses this. So that difference of about $19 million is mainly coming from three places. One is we have added in a placeholder cost related to cost for a senior center of $7.5 million. We've added in about $2 million related to renovation rehab of the Lansing Millis building. And then we've added in $8 million towards the water treatment plants, or there would be 2 water treatment plants to be specific, related to the PFAS issue that we've talked about. In the 200,000 items, that we've got 3 items for roughly, call it $200,000. Those are sort of subsets of the $8 million that we've added in for those water treatment plants. So those are big numbers, no question about it. And frankly, we're doing our best to stay on top of these numbers as they come in. The one other item that is not on this list that would likely be a significant one is costs related to the school to renovate the middle high school. So we do have a fairly significant item in there right now related to roofing and HVAC repairs for the middle high school, but we don't yet have enough information to put in a better number for kind of the long-term, ultimate rehabilitation of that building. So that's something we'll work with the school committee over the next months to get something. And I know that they're speaking later. I don't know that they're speaking to that particular issue, but that is something that we know is very important, and we want to get that on there as soon as we have some good numbers on that. So they're big numbers, no question, and they're just getting bigger. But again, we're trying our best to give the best picture we can to the town of what's coming down the road. And again, I feel like we have made some great progress here, because frankly, 3-4 years ago, I think nobody had any idea what was coming on the road. And at least now we've got a pretty good idea of what the next 10 years looks like, broken down year by year. So I'll just, again, pause and take any questions on that, or Pete, if you'd like to add any comments from your experience on the committee, be happy to hear that too.
So any question, I'm going to close this one out at the end, but are there any comments from the committee, please, or anybody on the meeting? None heard. Obviously, there's some data there and there's certainly more data behind that that would probably prompt more discussion. John, off the top of your head, how many projects total make up that 73 million?
Good question. It's around 200. I don't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 200.
One of the reasons that I asked that is because I want one to publicly thank John. He's done the yeoman's level of effort here, and is the major contributor as the chair to that committee, and done a ton of work. One of the things that we highlighted during many discussions that we had with Kerry Roche, Jim McCaffrey, John Corcoran, Mike Kaczynski, Carol Johnston, who are attendees at the meeting, and everybody else that I've mentioned are committee members. A lot of work goes into this. We're doing this with spreadsheets. And that is something that we recommend we migrate away from, and we actually use an enterprise level tool of which there are many publicly available, and we recommend we will, if we haven't already, we'll be requesting resources both in some sort of software and training for the volunteers that are on this committee, and perhaps an administrative assistant to help with the level of effort. Tracking a project for 10 years on a spreadsheet is not how this is done with anybody that has millions and millions of dollars in capital assets, and it shouldn't be the way that Millis does it, in my opinion. So that's something that would help us to help convey clearly, with some clarity, as to what the projects are, where they're funded from, et cetera, et cetera. It's not an excuse to the previous discussion. There are improvements. I think John would agree with me. There are improvements that can be made and will be made going forward. I frankly agree with most of Kathy's comments in terms of, clarity for where funding comes from. My assertion, though, is that this is the report that the committee voted on. This is the report that we have right now, and going forward, perhaps it gets changed, but this is it. This is how it's written right now. The committee is not going to go, to my knowledge, is not going to reconvene. It's not going to go back. And the information that is requested or discussed in terms of what the funding sources are, although it can show up in this particular report, it definitely will be included in the warrant articles, however they may be structured by the select board. So I'm going to leave it at that unless somebody wants to have one last word from the committee. Great. Okay, John, thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Pete. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, is Karen on, Deirdre?
Yes, she
I
is.
am.
Great,
Hi,
thanks,
Pete.
Deirdre. And hi, Karen, how are you? The floor is yours.
I'm doing well. How's everyone doing tonight? Thanks for having me. So I'm here to present the town buildings budget. And although I work in the select board office, I work as the operations support manager, and part of that is managing the town buildings budget. This is not to be confused with the building department, which is our friend, Mr. Giampetro. This is the actual physical buildings in the town. So just briefly, the town buildings account does provide for various costs associated with the Veterans Memorial Building, which is Town Hall. It includes, and is not limited to, building repairs, water sewer costs, heat and fuel, electricity, as well as electricity for the library. We also cover some maintenance agreements, including cleaning services for the library, police, and fire, as well as things like trash pickup. And the salary for the energy manager is part of this budget as well. So I don't know if you want me to just kind of speak about the actual proposed budget, or I guess, Deirdre,
Really
while you're
just-
flipping through that, I will say, oh, I'm sorry, Pete, go ahead.
Really, you can hit any significant changes, whether they be plus or minus, any departures from previous, you can comment on those, Karen, that would be great. Or if
Perfect.
there's anything COVID related potentially that was unforeseen or something you anticipate going forward, anything that you think would be noteworthy, really.
Okay, then just not to make it too boring here, but we will say we did a lot of updates this year. I will note we had a lot of repairs to the building. Some were unfortunately insurance claims for us. However, we do now have a new gym floor, a new roof on the building, and then Bob Weiss, as I said, our energy manager. Sorry, Deirdre, I'm kind of skipping around here. Our energy manager has been working on a new HVAC energy management system here at Town Hall, which has been great. Trying to think what else we've got here. And he's worked on an expanded energy management system at the fire station and the library. And to note that you were saying for COVID, we have been using some of the CARES Act funds for additional cleaning and disinfecting. And also Bob has brought in the Green Communities Grant and utility incentives. That was a total of $250,000, $250,332. I think that's noteworthy. That does include projects around the various buildings. It also does include some of the school building projects as part of that. The only major change I would say, if you're looking at the regular, sorry, Deirdre, if you want to bring up the actual town building proposed budget, the only thing that I would note here is where it says maintenance contracts and B&B maintenance contracts. We're just simply combining that into one line. We used to do things a little bit differently. We handle the majority of the bills as far as maintenance, and it doesn't make sense to separate them anymore. So we have combined those. And I see here it says 70,000. We've actually dropped that to 65,000 for this year.
Okay.
Other than that, there isn't anything that's too noteworthy on here. It's a fairly, it's pretty much level service, some inflation cost. The only other thing of note, bear with me, is that we have put in a capital request, which we've been waiting to do for several years, and that is putting a new fire alarm system in at Town Hall. and I missed it, John, if you spoke to this already as part of the capital. But the current fire alarm system at Town Hall is well outdated. It is well over 20 years old. We need to replace the detectors. There's also an old master box system that's no longer being used. We're moving to a radio box system, and I would consider this a health and human safety issue. And I'm sure you could talk to the fire chief if you had questions on that, but I think we cannot wait any longer on this. It's a total of $63,000. I'm sure we'd all love to use this on different things, but it is something that needs to happen for our poor building.
I'll just comment, I think John has dropped off, but I'll
Oh,
just
okay,
comment
sorry.
that it is in fact it was considered and prioritized by the capital planning committee. It's in the higher priority group of projects at this figure, $63,000. And Chief Barrett did come and speak with us about it, as well as
Great.
I think Mike has spoken to us about it as well. So we're certainly aware
Yeah.
of it, and it is included on this year's top priorities.
Perfect. And I would say that's the only real noteworthy item. Other than that, we have a good staff. Paul Sims does a good job. Like I said, Bob is fantastic about getting us grants. And although Maureen and I both basically work for the select board and for Mike, we also do kind of manage this town buildings, and she helps me out a lot with that as well. She actually pays, we pay out of our office all of the electricity bills at this point, and we have, I think, 75 different accounts that she has to maintain every month. As just part of her job. So it's not always a small task, but we
Karen,
do work together.
Would you
So unless you have any
clarify the
questions.
maintenance contracts?
Sure.
I do. Would you clarify on the maintenance contracts? You mentioned that those have been consolidated, and that's why that has gone up. Can you specify which facilities that 70,000 now includes?
So that it includes all 4 of our main
A
buildings.
roll up of,
Right, it's town hall, fire, police, and library. But it's the only ones that we put as that we all use would be Patriots Disposal, which is the trash removal for all of the buildings. Any cleaning costs for any of the buildings are all rolled into this budget, particularly. Also, let's see what else we have on here. Alarm system maintenance. It includes all of our HVAC maintenance for the VMB, particularly the Veterans Memorial Building. And elevator, absolutely. Elevator and the, sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Boiler, like I said, anything to do with that. Any other kind of repair, any electrical work, anything like that.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any
Certainly.
questions from any meeting participants, committee or otherwise? Okay, great. None heard. Karen, thank you very much for joining us and
No
for the
problem. You're
information.
welcome. You're very welcome.
Okay. Next on the agenda is debt services, employee benefits, general insurance, and Carol Johnston.
Thank you very much for having me. The first one we'll go over is the debt and interest. Deirdre, would you mind putting that slide up, please? I can try. Everybody on the committee must have received it today for the debt schedule. Just send over to Deirdre. I don't know if everybody, oh, here she goes. I could talk through it if you'd like. So you'll see that the debt service is expected to increase a little over $63,000 this year. The interest is expected to go down about $130,000. The difference on that is that on the first couple years that we paid for the school, the interest was high. and it's coming down as the principal payments are made. And that's, I did send an attachment to you from the treasurer, so you could see all of the items that are included in the long-term debt schedule and also the short-term. So there's the breakout of what makes up all of that total amount of money. So we can move on to the employee benefits, if everybody is comfortable with the debt schedule. Do you have that slide, Deirdre?
I believe so. Yeah.
Oh.
Sure, just
Oh,
one
great.
question on
Okay,
the debt
great.
schedule, but
Thank
Deirdre,
you.
You don't have to move back to it. Just one quick question on the debt schedule. Could you
Yes.
email that out in Excel format to everybody? It's just nice to have it.
Mhm.
Sure.
Work on it.
I can send that out to you.
Excel.
Oh,
would be-
Deirdre, did I send it to you in Excel? I think I did.
Okay,
The employee benefits is the next one up. As you can see, the health insurance has gone up significantly year over year. About 240,000 increase for the health benefit. The other major increase is the Norfolk County retirement that's gone up 250,000. So those are the big drivers for the benefits piece. The Medicare B reimbursements have gone up. Oh, those are retirees who can put in for reimbursement for their Medicare Part B. And so we had, last year we budgeted based on what we had actuals for 2019, but we had a large influx of people requesting reimbursements in fiscal year 2020. So that's why we've increased it for this year. Hopefully that will be sufficient. So that's why that's an increase of 16,000 there.
Okay.
The next slide is general insurance. Our general insurance, oh, excuse me.
Real quick, let me just interject if I could, Carol. Any
Sure.
comments from employee benefits or debt schedule from the meeting participants?
I do, Mr. Chair. I
Go ahead.
still need to be educated on this. Thank you. Could you tell me, Ms. Carroll, if the health benefits, does the school pay for their own, or is this amount including the school employees?
This amount includes all employees, municipal and school, that are under our current health insurance and benefit program. That is the way that these items are done as a shared expense through the town.
What do you mean by shared expense through the chair?
When it's an expense that is shared between the groups, so that it's seen as one town, one benefit. It's not part of the municipal budget. It's not part of the school budget. It's a non-discretionary part of the budgets.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, just why is it such that it's like that? Why aren't for the school employees it's considered in their school budget? Is this historical, or is it a state law? Thanks.
Carol, I'm sure you get the question, but I would like to kind of add on. I would like to add on to the question. Is it prorated? Is there an actual reimbursement that comes from the school and comes from the municipal, or is it's top line funded from the general fund? Can you clarify that?
It's top line funded from the general fund.
Okay.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chair, if if something, I don't know if it starts with the selectmen, or do the finance committee make a recommendation about how this is paid? And that's subject for another day discussion, but I'd just like to put that in the back of people's minds that it's been a concern of a few people for a few years. So Thank you for allowing me to ask this question and get the answer. And you said it much better than I did, Pete.
Mr.
That's
Chairman?
okay. That's okay. And one quick question, Mike or Carol, and I'll definitely come back to you, Mike, but also, could you comment, Carol, as to whether there's a benefit to pooling the health insurance across the town versus having two separate policies? Is there a cost savings?
I would say there's no necessarily cost savings from an accounting standpoint. My experience has been in the 4 towns I've worked in over the last 25 years. This is how it's done usually, unless there's a regional school district. In that case, the school district will have their own health insurance account. But for towns that it's just a single town school district, the insurance is usually all together. This is accounted for on the Schedule 19 costs, which is a report that's sent to the state, which shows the town's support for its school system, in relation to other things such as pensions and insurance. But generally it is included as a single item. And as Carol had mentioned, it's considered above the line or item in that it's a non-discretionary cost that is really taken off the top, and then it's reviewed as to the available funding after that for individual school and municipal budgets. So this is generally the way it's done, and certainly if folks are interested on the dollar breakdown, that's something I'm sure that Carol could provide. But from a budgetary standpoint, this is generally looked at. It's one town with all the departments, including the school department, and this is the cost of health insurance for the town.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, Joyce.
Thank you. Is it my understanding of the question, the town collects taxes for the health insurance, correct? And I have a question as far as the recreation department. Are they billed for their insurance? Because isn't that?
The recreation department is on, it has a revolving fund. It's a 53.5E that is set up. One of the requirements of a 53.5E is if you pay salaries from that fund, you have to pay that percentage of benefits for that employee from that fund. So it's the same thing that we do with extended day. They have a situation like that. And so the town picks up half of the salary for the recreation director, and the other half is picked up by the recreation revolving fund. So the recreation revolving fund will pay for half of the director's benefits, and the other person that is paid by the revolving fund is the 10-hour-a-week administrative assistant, and her portion, 1/3 of her benefit is paid by the revolving fund. She only works 30 hours a week.
So, okay, so only half.
Joyce, in short, the reason it's different is because a 53E is equivalent to an activity that generates revenue. So the town clerk's office doesn't necessarily generate its revenue based on usage. It's always there. So it comes out of, the general, that's why it's distinct. There is a difference between, as an example, the town clerk's office, or I don't know, you name it, the DPW. The DPW doesn't collect fees for participation in activities that they're planning, or they don't go around necessarily billing for something that they would do on the streets. But the rec department does generate revenue, and that's why there's a cost share there, in the sense that some of their budget comes out of, as Carol just described, 50% for the director's salary and 50% comes out of the revolving fund. And the revolving fund is money collected from their activities, from fees for kids, seniors, whomever participating in their, and when they sign up and they pay a fee, those funds go into the revolving fund.
So none of our taxes go to the health insurance for the recreation department?
Half
No.
of them do.
Half of them do.
Just half?
Well, if the if the fund is in deficit, then the town would pick up the full amount. But the fund is self-supporting at this point, from what I understand, what I've been told.
Okay. All right.
Can I
I
ask
just didn't, I was under the impression that the recreation department was paying for all of their health insurance.
No, that is not true.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
I want to keep us
question, please, on that slide.
moving. Who's that? Is that Craig?
Yes, Craig. Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to, the call I was waiting for unfortunately came at the moment that I wanted to hear the most. So but it's my mother and I had to take the call. So can you put up that slide again, please, Deidre, about the funds you just had up? It's a pretty simple question. On that list of all the benefits, Norfolk County Retirement, which I think is the largest item on there. I can't recall. That's why I wanted to see the slide.
Second highest. Health insurance is the highest.
Yeah. How much of that is municipal and how much of that is school?
I can't give you a percentage right off the top of my head, but it would be all employees that are not teachers would fall under the Norfolk County Retirement.
Okay, so non-teachers so everybody but teachers. So the school administration would be in Norfolk County, but the teachers union would not.
Exactly.
Okay,
And the Massachusetts Teachers Association Retirement Fund is fully funded by the state of Massachusetts. So there's no funding coming from the town of Millis.
so if we were to start breaking this up by constituent departments, the lion's share of the Norfolk County retirement would go to the municipality, and 60 to 80% of the health insurance would go to the school. It would be my guess, just based on the typical numbers. But I think it's a worthwhile way to look at it if we wanted to, because it would show the true costs, because the school is not hitting the Norfolk County Retirement Fund at all significantly, and the health insurance is being, probably the majority of that is the school, or at least a large amount of it. 60, 65, 70% at least, probably. I'm just trying to think, if we're going to break this up, it's going to have ramifications to both sides that are pretty impactful, but I think it is a good way to look at it. And it's a more of a true way to look at it too, to see where those costs actually fall.
So do you think,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Kathy McInnes,
Go ahead.
that we could
Go ahead.
get from the finance folks, what are the actual costs that off the top go for municipal, and what are the actual costs that go to the school committee, the school department?
We certainly can request it. Yep.
Thank you.
And just the way we've been doing it right now, the school's basically been picking up, going back to the old model that we just used last year, they'd be paying 65%, basically paying 65% of that $6 million cost, because it's coming off the top before the split occurred. Now, we're not doing that same split this year, but we're close enough to it that that's the basis that was used. So I'd like to see how close that comes in, because that could have big implications.
Mr. Kaczynski, hold on one second, whoever that was, I'm not sure, but Mr. Kaczynski, can you name a town, or are you aware of any towns that do split it out?
I am not for any towns that have just an individual school district for their town. It's non-multi-town. I'm not aware of any town that splits it up.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure who I cut off there. I'm sorry.
That was just me. And I'm saying I usually ask questions that I know the answer to. I don't know how this one's going to play out. So it's a dangerous question. So I don't know if it's going to come out exactly the fair way we've allocated it. The 65-35 historically, or whether it's going to be skewed dramatically one way or the other, but there could be huge budget ramifications that have to be taken into account. And I believe it would probably be on the municipal side if it were split out that we'd have to consider. But that's,
well, I would just say that just because we're asking a question does not mean that there's going to be a change.
Yeah.
And I'll
Exactly.
be glad to, we'll be glad to get that information for you. I'm sorry, but we will not have it in time for our town meeting. As you know, we're inundated with a lot of things going on right now, but we're glad to get that information for you as soon as possible.
Yeah, I don't see it as something we'd want to change at this town meeting personally, but I think
Okay.
we'll get it at a convenient time.
All right, I'm going to press on unless anybody's got anything left on employee benefits. What else? There was one other.
General insurance.
Please, yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So the general insurance has gone up. We got notification from Maya that our general insurance will be going up 7%, but if we pay early, it'll be, we'll get a 2% discount. So we put in a 5% increase overall, recognizing that we are going to get that discount. So you can see it's just a matter of function of adding, multiplying it times 1.05 to get to the numbers.
Okay.
Okay. And
Any questions for Carol?
I have one
Carol,
more.
did you have more?
And not that it's on this list, but have we heard from Tri-County on anything yet?
yes,
That's always the giant unknown.
the Tri-County number this year is, I believe, 955,000.
I don't recall what it was, but I thought it was over $1 million last year. So that's a
It
little
was
bit of
1,049,000 last year.
I'll take it.
Okay, Carol, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kaczynski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you like me to discuss the items in my budget narrative or head straight to my budget? I will leave that to you.
Hit the wave tops in your narrative. If you feel there are none, then head right to the budget.
Well, I won't go through them, but I would, if ask the finance committee if they have time at some point just to go through that. It does outline different responsibilities of this office, as well as some of the accomplishments of this office over the past year and a half. We put in there for your review. So in light of that, I'll spare you the rest of that and just jump right to the budgets we're presenting this evening. There are no major adjustments in the wages, other than I just want to touch upon that the SEIU contract is not formally ratified yet, so those numbers will be tweaked slightly. Once that contract is done, that may either be through the article that's on the warrant, or if the contract is ratified soon enough, we'll try to put those in the line items, but that's unknown at this point. Just touching upon the expense line items, I think the only thing I wanted to mention is I think the original request for consulting services, if you look far down the bottom, towards the bottom where it says $16,000, I'll be reducing that to $5,000. And just to let you know, that is really to address unknown items that may come up during the year that require maybe a small consulting contract, whether that be a appraisal of a piece of property or some other minor work, just so we have some funding available for that without having to wait till the next town meeting or having to go for a reserve fund transfer for that.
Mike, before you go, I just want to make sure I heard you. Your consulting services line for 22 requests is going from 16 to 5.
That's correct.
I would say that's high. I know that like 19 was high, probably associated with the school and any legal issues and number of issues that came up. Is 5 too low considering? I like 5, trust me. I like for numbers to go down, but I don't like for reserve fund requests to come later.
I appreciate that. I think, based on what I know now, I'm comfortable with 5. Certainly we are trying to balance a budget, and I have to look at, all the line items in the budgets and determine, what the relative priorities are. And based on that, I felt comfortable reducing that to 5,000. I can't say 100% that nothing will come up during the year that would require some assistance at some point, but I feel fairly confident that we should be able to get through the year with that reduced number.
Okay. And while I'm looking at it, it did catch my attention. Why is the police detail line doubling? And which activities that is the executive officer responsible for? Excuse me, the executive office responsible for that would require you to pay for a police detail?
I believe that has to do with the
Mhm.
elections. Karen, do you have,
Or Mr. Chair, I was gonna say it's Karen.
Go ahead, Karen.
The details, we handle the details for any of the town meetings, elections, anything to do with that, any kind of major town event, that's the line it comes out of.
Okay,
A-
so
and
the
we
fact
have-
that we're
in
having
light of a lot
outdoor,
of things- Oh, sorry, Pete. I was gonna say, in light of a lot of things that have gone on with, there's been a lot of controversy around elections and such. We've had to increase the number of details at some of these events. So, and obviously they're making more money as the years go by. So that's why it's a lot
Yep.
higher.
okay, thank you.
um,
Mike, back to you.
Up
yes.
one question. Oh,
No, that's fine.
Go ahead,
I just
Kathy.
wanted to, through the chair, sorry. I thought Karen Beret was putting all the maintenance contracts together. Mr. Kaczynski, could you tell me what this one is for $12,000?
I believe, Karen, I'll let you field that one.
This is the maintenance contract for, oh, you've got me off center now. Let me see. It's not for buildings. This is maintenance for, oh, this is the copier maintenance.
Copy
I'm
machine.
sorry.
That's what I thought. Yeah. This is for all the copy machines in the building.
Wow.
I know.
Yes. Yes, it is an expense.
We better get Robert Weiss on that, isn't he, Mr. Green?
Oh,
Well, I
we're
think our
working on it
electricity
as we
contract is bad.
speak.
I think we should drop that down and then, people have to go online. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious about that.
No, you're welcome, and it's a good catch, good question. Okay, Mike,
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually don't have anything else on this particular item, though I would like to touch upon my above level service request in regards to this, the department. If you look in your packet, there were a few requests for above level service. One was the full-time human resources administrator, which I'm not requesting to move forward at this time, but I did want to point out that we do feel it's a need of the community. The other is an increase to Department Assistant 2 from 18 hours a week to actually 35 hours a week. This would be an increase of approximately $21,000 in cost for the department. There's been I think I have a summary in your packet of the justification. I don't know if you want me to read through that, but the summary is really this office has been stretched very thin. I did notice this quite quickly when I started working here 4 years ago. But it's a continuing problem with the workload here increasing. And I believe a need for some additional staffing. I think the most cost-effective way to produce, increased productivity here is through the increase at this point of that Department Assistant 2 position up to 35 hours a week. That will allow Karen to be able to delegate some additional duties to Maureen, who's currently in that position, and would then allow me to delegate items to her, which would then allow me to handle certain types of work that simply have not had time to do here and that unfortunately have lagged because of just the work level. So I personally feel it's a pretty inexpensive way to up the productivity overall in the administrative office. And, I urge the Finance Committee to support that. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think that's it I have for this budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the Finance Committee members may have.
okay, thanks. I'm gonna come out with one, and that is, why did you cancel the HR request?
It's really funding availability.
Okay.
The select board had outlined the priorities, and not that the human resource person was not a priority, but there were other priorities that were higher up on the list, and just the amount of funding
understand.
available.
I understand. I just wanted to hear you say it versus
And I think,
you didn't think it was needed.
yeah, and I think, well, I won't say it's not needed, but I think that we could actually get some benefit in that area through the increase in the department assistant too. I believe that, right now I'm handling, a great deal of the human resource issues. Karen is handling some as well. I think she could pick up some more of that work and assist me some more if she was able to delegate some of her work to Maureen.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Any
Chair?
questions
Chair?
from the committee?
Oh, go ahead, Jody.
Jody, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, I personally would support any move by the town to solidify the human resources roles, across the school department and the town departments. I think that we've gone so long without any formal kind of HR person is kind of ticking time bomb is one way to put it. And so any move that you can make in a positive direction to solidify that role and to have point people who are in charge of that, I think is the right direction to go. I personally would support having an HR person, but recognize the limitations on our town finances. And so I appreciate keeping your eye on that and continuing to advocate for that. I think that's an important step that we need to take.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes, please. I'd like to commend Mike Kuzinski for going back to his budget and making cuts in view of some of the other items that the select board feel are important. And I just wish that other directors would do the same thing when there's priorities and would be willing to cut back on their budgets a little and follow Mike Kuzinski's example. And I appreciate giving Maureen some more work. I've seen what's gone on there, and they've helped me out with the enterprise committee when I haven't been able to do something. And I know for a fact that it's going to allow Mike Kuzinski to get more involved. And you're doing a great job as the HR person, Mike. So,
Thanks, I'm
I don't
trying.
think I don't think anything's gone bad because of a lack of an HR person there. But since day one, you've been there. We knew you've needed an HR person. And what have you been there, 2 years now?
4 years.
Oh, geez, time flies.
Seems like two.
Yes.
It should be on that capital planning list up high next year for you. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate that. I do get a lot of help from a lot of great folks here, but
Right.
again, we're all spread a little thin at times.
And Mr. Chair, it's Karen. I just wanted to add my 2 cents on this too, and obviously in favor of this. We only have Maureen 17 hours a week right now, which means there are often times if Mike and I are in meetings, we don't even have anybody to man the office if I'm in a meeting with him. There's no one to answer the phone. It can be proved to be very difficult even on the base level. We work very well together, and she certainly is capable of taking on a lot of other work. And like I said,
Your
then I
work,
could
yeah.
take on and help. Yeah, and I could take on and help Mike
Yeah.
with more
Right.
of his, and anyone who's come in the office realizes that things, all of the offices in the building are, I think, are a bit understaffed. We take on a lot, and that's fine. But things do tend to all kind of funnel into our office, and even if it doesn't end up there, it's still trying to find who it actually belongs to. And we're just a busy office. We would love the help, and I think it would really benefit the town. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Karen, and everybody for their comments there. Last call, and then we're going to move on to the school. We're getting a little bit behind schedule, but that's all right.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, I just have one more budget.
Sorry,
I wanted
Mike.
to go over it, and that's town council.
Thank
you. Historically, we've had usually around $90,000 in the town council budget. We dropped it 10% this year because of the concern over COVID and some cuts that we made. So this year it's at 81,000. It's going to be real tight this year. We may or may not make it without a little transfer. We'll see. It'll be close. But I am seeking 95,000 in that line item next year, primarily because I expect to have 3 to 4, depending on circumstances, union contracts expiring that we need to negotiate. Right now we have a $6,000 per month retainer with Mead, Talaman, and Costa. So that is 72,000 of that amount. The remaining 23,000 I'm requesting is for Labor Council, again, in assistance with those negotiations, as well as special counsel as needed as circumstances may arise. So, so that's the request this year. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Any questions?
Why, of course, Mr. Chair, if I might ask Mr. Kaczynski,
Go ahead.
if the enterprise funds are taking on any legal contracts?
I'm not aware of it. I will have, I know the one item that, and it's not included here, but the one item would be the PFAS item. We did just bring on special counsel for that. And that legal counsel will be funded through the water enterprise. But none of this, and I'll take a look at that after, but I don't believe any of this will be water and sewer directly.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, great. Thank you for your time, Mike, as always.
Thank you. Thanks to the committee.
You bet. Okay, I think it's time for Terry and perhaps the school committee. I'm not sure who exactly is, or it's, I'm sorry, it's the superintendent, Mr. Mullane. Over to you, Bob.
You're muted.
Thank you. And Deirdre, I'll try and share my screen.
I can do it.
Okay, I'll give it a shot first, and if I can't do it, then we'll go to you.
Okay.
Okay. I can't see people, so are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
We can see
Okay.
we've got your cover slide up.
Okay, great. So, and I'll try and get us back on schedule. But I know the school department budget is a large ticket item, so I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to see into the budget. And as I can't see people, if you have questions, feel free to chime in, or if you want to wait till the end, that's fine too.
Bob, I will try to stop you at major segue points
Terrific.
to allow for questions versus, especially in a large presentation like this. And in terms of timeliness, it's secondary to making sure that we understand your budget. So you do what you have to do.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the timeline, obviously, last week we presented, we had the public hearing for the budget at the school committee meeting. We're here at the end of March, presenting to the finance committee, and we'll continue to make adjustments as the revenue picture becomes clearer, and then hopefully have that balanced budget for town meeting and final approval of the FY22 budget by the school committee in June. Some of our guiding principles for the budget: we want the budget to support programs and services that are of the highest quality. We want to fund curriculum initiatives and instructional resources. We want to provide adequate staffing levels. We want to maintain level services, support our salary obligations, comply with all state and federal mandates, provide maintenance and capital improvement for our buildings and grounds, and address educational gaps that have occurred as a result of COVID-19. Some of the highlights for the budget: we are proposing a $17 million, $173,101 budget. That's a 4% increase from FY21. It includes a 4.58% increase in salary of $756,394, and a decrease in expenditures of $95,889. That's a 4% decrease in expenditures, which amounts to a total of 0.58% of the total budget. And that's where we get to the 4% increase. We have critical needs beyond the 4% increase totaling $369,722, and warrant articles totaling $252,944. Our per pupil expenditure, this is the old PPE, not the new PPE, but our per pupil expenditure for FY19 was $16,703. And as you can see, that's about $450 below the state average of $17,150. And as our enrollment has declined over the last few years, our per pupil expenditure has increased. For 2020, our per pupil expenditure declined slightly to $16,584, but we don't have the data yet from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to compare that with neighboring districts and the state average. So this is FY19 information. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education also has a district analysis and review tool that links districts that are similar in terms of enrollment, special populations, and grade span. So the DOT tool links districts. So here are the districts that Millis has been linked through DOT. And once again, you can kind of see that our per pupil expenditure is roughly, in the mid-range of those schools that we are connected with through DOT. The DOT average per pupil expenditure was $16,923, just below the state average. As I mentioned, enrollment has declined over the last few years. And so our current total number of students in the district pre-K to 12 is 1,167. It's a little different from the chart because the chart reflects numbers in October of 2020. And since then, we have added 9 students to schools. Enrollment is projected to increase over the next 10 years. So 2020, 2021 is kind of the trough, and we're expected to increase enrollment in the years ahead. And this information is from the New England School Development Council, which does projections for schools and in using, the demographics and housing starts and things like that. Declining enrollment over the last few years has resulted in class sizes that are manageable and support personalization, collaboration, and addressing individual needs. And so you can see that, class sizes 22 and below at the elementary level, are the gold standard. It's excellent that we're able to do that. We see our 7th grade class is our smallest group of students, but the largest class we have in the district is right behind them in grade 6. Grade 3 is also a large class at Clyde Brown. There are 4 teachers at each grade level, 1 through 6, except for grade 3. They have 5 teachers at grade level. So, there's a little bump in student population at that grade as well. And in the high school, normally our class sizes might range from 12 to 30, but due to COVID, when we knew we had to socially distance, we intentionally capped class sizes at 25, which meant that some students weren't enrolled in a particular elective because we weren't enrolling beyond 25. In a normal year, we would have some class sizes over 25 at the high school. Some of the things that impact our enrollment as well, declining enrollment has resulted in opportunities to have more choice seats available. And we receive approximately 5,000 per choice student. We're expected to receive over $500,000 in choice funding for FY22. And of course, these funds have been relied on heavily as we look to supplement our budget. And that current number of 88 is again an October number. We are actually at 91 choice students right now, as we've had some students who lived in Millis but moved out and chose to remain in our schools. So then they are counted as choice students. Other things that impact enrollment at the high school level, students, Millis students attending Tri-County and Norfolk Aggie. And I think Craig mentioned Tri-County earlier. We have had a slight decline in students attending both the Tri-County and the Aggie. The current 9th grade class, we had 4 students attending Tri-County and 1 student attending the Aggie. And so those numbers are significantly down. Last year, the class of 2023, we had 21 kids heading to Tri-County and 3 kids heading to the Aggie. So you can see that there was an increase in students choosing those options, and that has dipped slightly this year. We've made some efforts to keep some kids in district with some different programming, with some career programming, some engineering program at the high school. And we think that's having an effect of keeping some kids in district. And certainly there are some kids in town, Tri-County or Norfolk Aggie is the best choice for them, but we think we can do a lot within our school to keep kids going to school at Millis High School. Other things affecting K-12 enrollment, we've had a slight decrease this year in students attending private schools. We've had a little increase in students attending homeschool. Some of that might be a function of the COVID situation. We have been contacted by some parents who have homeschooled their students, inquiring about having the kids return to Millis Public Schools, either for the remainder of this year or beginning next year. And then we have 5 students in charter schools.
I think that's a good segue, if you would, Mr. Mullaney, and I'll just open it up to the floor for any questions or comments thus far. None heard. Please proceed. Thanks.
Okay, so now we can get into some of the details of $17 million budget. We'll look at salaries, expenditures, those critical needs, and warrants. So salaries, last year we had $14,163,980 worth of salaries. Adjustments made for FY22 include cost of living adjustments, contractual step and lane changes, supplementary salary increases, and this would include things like enhanced longevity and some of the administrative contractual obligations. So that supplemental amounts to just over $40,000. Ed reform line is a salary line that enables us to react to staffing changes that might occur during the course of a year, like a leave of absence or something like that. And we found that for FY22, we didn't have to carry as much on that line as we did for FY '21. So we have a reduction in that line of $67,000. The 18 to 22 transition program, and I'll speak more about that in a moment. That included an increase in $53,000 in salaries. Bus driver salaries that are absorbed by the FY '22 budget. I'll also speak more about that in a minute. They added $127,633 to our salary budget. Retirements with, we are anticipating about $43,000 worth of savings due to retirements. All that leads us to the total increase of $756,394 for a total salary line of $14,920,374 in salaries. And again, that is a 4.5% increase.
Any questions from, that's a lot of data. It's a lot of good data. Any questions on there? Bob, could you help me understand ed reform better? I didn't process that.
Sure. It's a line item, and Terry might be able to jump in and help me out here a little bit with that. It's a line item that we keep that is related to steps and lanes, and if there are, if there's a leave of absence for some reason, we have some money budgeted in case there's something like that happens and we need to hire like a long-term sub or a short-term sub or something like that. And looking at last year's situation with staffing, we felt we needed more, and this year we don't feel like we need as much, so we felt like we could cut that line.
Okay.
Yeah, am I muted? No.
Oh, you're good.
No, yeah, I think Bob explained it well. I think, for example, last year, one of the things we budgeted more money in the line because we knew we were going to have a transition of superintendent. And honestly, we didn't know whether the superintendent would be an internal candidate or an external candidate. We were very fortunate this year that the committee chose Bob. But a lot of that $67,000 was related to the possibility of having to bring in an external candidate while Nancy was still on board and having double administrative salaries, for example. And so that's where a lot of that reduction comes from.
Do you not, and Terry, I'm sorry, but you don't anticipate necessarily having as much of a cost for Ms. Knowlton's transition and some of the moves that are being discussed or advertised?
No, we don't think so. We think we still have an adequate sum of money in there to cover those transitions.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Mr. Mulvaney.
Okay, and then so some more detail on that transition program. It's a program for students who we are responsible for until they turn the age of 22. So it's our 18 to 22 transition program. These are students who exit the high school, yet we're still responsible for their education. So this past year, we've partnered with Medfield for a program at shared cost. We have a number of kids graduating this year who will be accessing the program next year, such that the enrollment for that shared program was too large. So we had to, start our own program, and it's an estimated cost savings of $420,000 exclusive of transportation if we had to transport these students and pay for an out-of-district tuition program. There is also, there could be an opportunity down the road in future years for that program to take in tuition students. With the anticipated enrollment next year and it being the first year, we certainly want to make sure we get this on solid footing and move the program forward. So we wouldn't be looking at tuitioning kids in from other towns this year, but that might be something down the road which could result in some cost savings. And then the bus driver salaries, our transportation revolving fund was really compromised by COVID. At the end of last school year in the spring, we had no transportation. We were giving refunds to families because school was totally remote. And then at the beginning of this year, right up until a few weeks ago, we had very limited bus capacity. So our revolving fund really took a hit. So to pay those bus driver salaries, we had to roll that into our operating budget. And then our expenditures, where we actually have a decrease in expenditures. We had a total of $2,348,646 worth of expenditures last year for FY21. We anticipate out-of-district tuitions increasing by $14,557 because of some cost savings this year in our special ed program and circuit breaker funds. We're actually able to prepay some tuitions, so we're able to reduce our expenditures for those tuitions by $151,956. We're looking at some increases that will be greater than 2% for some expenditure items, things like the Munis system, some of our software licenses, some professional development costs associated with the collective bargaining agreement. And so we project those costs those expenses that will increase by greater than 2%, adding $45,590 to the budget. We have some adjustments. We found when we were moving the chart of accounts from RDA to Munis, we found that there was a line for, again, one of those expensive copier maintenance lines that was actually listed twice. We only paid it once, but it was listed twice. So we were able to reduce $4,080 from the expenditures by eliminating one of those lines. We will forego the 2% increase for inflation on expenses, which is essentially, cutting our expenses. But in doing that, we were able to decrease our expenditure budget by $95,889, bringing us to a total in expenditures of $2,252,757, and that's a 4% decrease from last year's expenditure line. And again, that represents 0.58% of the total budget, which brings us to the magic number of an overall 4% increase.
Okay, any questions thus far?
Mr. Chair, Kathy, it says
Go ahead, Kathy.
decrease. 4% decrease?
In the expenditure line, yeah.
I thought you said increase.
No, there's a decrease in the expenditures. There was an increase in the salaries.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
we put them all together and we get to 4% increase in the total budget.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Joyce, your hand's up.
Oh, go ahead, Joyce.
I think it was inadvertent.
It was up a while ago.
Sorry.
Um,
Go ahead, Doug.
You finished chewing, Joyce.
Thanks, sorry.
Just one question about the sort of the breakdown there with a 4% increase in the salaries and a 4% decrease in, or the decrease in expenditures getting to the overall 4%.
Correct.
I know there's a whole bunch of costs that were unexpected. And as you mentioned, there's some expenses that you didn't incur because of this whole COVID mess. To what extent do you have numbers, or that not sure I'm going to phrase this correctly, but there's some expenditures on the salary line. There's costs on the salary line that I think were necessary as relate to COVID. Are those anticipated to go away, or are we essentially looking at a sort of a permanent step up in what would be a salary base due to COVID specifically?
Well, actually, the hiring we've done this year relative to COVID is not included in, the budget as proposed. Those costs have been assigned to COVID, the CVRF grant and the ESSER grant. So we hired additional safety monitors and substitutes, not substitutes, learning facilitators and personnel like that. And those were charged to those COVID grant accounts. So it's really not reflected in the budget. We do have, we will have some funding next year with the elementary and secondary school emergency relief act, the ESSER funds. And if next year starts and we need those additional personnel, we will be able to draw on those funds to make those salary payments.
Pete, I will.
Yeah. Thanks. I was just trying to get a sense for how that's going to impact the longer term, the longer term budget.
Right. So the salaries in this budget are really not COVID related, and so they'll be sustained. We'll sustain them as the years go on.
So this is what you would have requested with a normal year if COVID didn't even occur.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, you're in good shape because I think under the new administration, you're in line for a bunch more money coming up in the next few years. So good for you.
We're hopeful, but until we see the check, we never.
Mr. Chair.
Hey, Joyce.
My hand had been up quite a while ago and it had reference to the 17% increase in students population over the next 10 years. How are you calculating that?
Well, that's from the New England School Development Council, NESDEC. They research schools and they look at the birth rate in towns, housing availability and things like that. So they produce a report every year that projects where a district is going. So for example, they'll take the number of births we had in Millis this past year and then project that out 5 years from now as our kindergarten class. And then, they look at other factors like housing and things like that. And they look historically at, where we've been before with similar numbers.
How accurate are they? I only ask because our population is such a large group of senior citizens. We've got a large amount of seniors in the town. I'm just curious. I don't know how many more new young families are moving in. So I'm just curious as to how accurate they are.
They actually
Go ahead, Terry.
are the most used group for projections in New England.
Okay,
So they have a very strong reliability as far as their projections. They are often used for building projects. I used them in New Hampshire. I used them in Vermont, and they come pretty close.
okay. Thank you.
I'm going to just kind of pile on to that question a little bit, and I don't expect to get a real lengthy answer, but does the school district have a plan to accommodate that growth by each school, by the K through 5, elementary, middle, and high school? What is the plan to accommodate that growth of 300 students?
Yeah, I think certainly Clyde Brown, as Terry mentioned, those statistics are, utilized in the planning of Clyde Brown. And so, we believe that Clyde Brown will be able to absorb, that those increases coming forward. The middle high school is challenged for space. However, if you look at 10 years back, from 2010 to 2020, our district population decreased by 21%. Now it's predicted to grow by 17%. So the space will still be the same in the middle high school building. Not to say we weren't crowded, and we had, 5 teachers in the high school. When I was high school principal back 10 years ago, we had 5 teachers on cots moving from room to room. Certainly, and I think John Barry mentioned it earlier tonight, looking at, potential renovations down the road in the middle high school building. Certainly those things would be addressed there. So, we are planning for it. And, it's doable as we are right now. But certainly, we're looking at ways to open some things up.
Thank you. All right, please proceed.
Okay, if I can get my screen back.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I think I got it. Oh, let me see. Oh, now you're looking at my calendar. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna stop that for a second and try again. They always tell me I have too many tabs on my computer and I never listen to them.
Wow, you're busy.
I guess, Deirdre, do you think you could share?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I try that.
I think we left off on
You were on
slide 16, maybe.
expenditures. Yeah, the expenditures slide, I think.
Okay. Here we go.
Yeah,
We're
so
on we should be on the first pie chart, Deidre.
Deidre, I don't know if it's just me, but I'm losing the side of the screen. It doesn't look like it's centered in entirely. I don't know if anybody else is missing that.
yeah, I see the same thing.
There you go.
There we go.
That works. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Deidre. Thank you. Just another way of looking at a 17,173,131 budget proposal, broken down into where the money's going. Nearly 86% of that budget is going to salaries. 5.8% of the budget goes to special education costs, tuitions, etc. 4.3% expenses, 2.2% energy, maintenance 1.2%, and just about 1% at transportation. Okay, Deidre, if you want to go to the next slide. Another way of looking at the $17.1 million budget, fixed and variable costs. The fixed costs would be salary obligations, special ed requirements, transportation, energy costs, things that we, really have little control over. We're obligated to fund. That makes up 94.5% of the budget. And then things like maintenance supplies, books, office supplies, things like that make up 5.5% of the budget. And if you want to do the next slide, please. The administrative team worked and has come up with some priority requests in excess of the 4% proposed budget. And I'll kind of walk through them here. Not necessarily in ranked order, but these are some of the things that, we believe will be critical in helping us maintain and improve programs and services. Most of them are personnel, but some are not. So we are looking to continue a literacy study that was begun in 2019-2020 at Clyde Brown. A full-time 1.0 math specialist at Clyde Brown. A 0.4 FTE middle school reading specialists. For our tech department, a single sign-on and rostering services that would save time for people in the tech department, and so both financial and human resources in getting those things. Single sign-on would help both staff and students sign in once and have access to all our learning platforms and software, etc. We would be looking at a district-wide 0.6 English language learner teacher. We've seen an increase in English language learner population in our schools. District-wide part-time technicians. One of the things COVID has done is turned our district into essentially a K-12 one-to-one technology district. And there's been, just an explosion of getting our technology out to kids. And, we have used some COVID funds to deal with that issue. And, we anticipate that once that genie's out of the bottle, you don't get it back in. We were certainly a technology-rich district prior to COVID. We are even more so now. A high school increase in tiers support. Again, this is somewhat related to COVID in that, we'd like to address some of the learning gaps that are the result of COVID, and these tiered support systems help us work with individual and small groups of students to, get them up to speed. Middle school 0.4 math specialist. Uniform for athletics, a uniform replacement, which has been out of the budget for a number of years. We'd like to get that in there and get a regular uniform rotation for our athletes. 1.0 music teacher at Clyde Brown. Right now we have a 2.2 FTE music teachers, and it's very challenging spreading those teachers across three schools. middle school 0.4 unified arts teacher. And so those total additional requests amount to $369,722. Okay, and then warrant articles, this was kind of addressed earlier in the meeting, but just some of the things that relative to the schools, the bus lease at $89,999, 3-year bus leases, the computer leases years 2 and 3, and the new 1-year computer lease for that keeps our technology up to date and rotates in new equipment when needed. And then the Medicaid billing, which costs amounts to $5,000 in an expense, but makes I believe, $40,000 to $50,000 for the town. And then some other warrants that again were mentioned tonight, the passenger bus at $34,000. And then we have the vans, green being flex fuel or electric if we can get them, the skid steer, and the total amount of that comes up to, if you could drop that down a little, Deirdre, that would be great. 252,009. Oh, right there. That's a good, thank you. $252,944 in warrant requests. And then
I'm going to ask, if I may interrupt, just going to
Sure.
ask a couple of questions. A good point now. I just we discussed this a little bit last night in the capital planning committee, and it's relevant to this slide. First off, the computer lease 1, I assume that's year 1 of a
Correct.
new lease.
Yes.
Okay. And so I would see where it would be a must fund in the sense if you have a lease that is up and you need to replace those computers, but there is not previously an authorization to do so, as there is on computer leases, the 2 and 3 right above it.
Mhm.
For clarity.
That's correct. I think the reason we have included it in the must fund list is because previously, before the change at last spring's town meeting, the entire warrant article was the 69.9. And I guess that's why we continued with that number, but you are correct. There would be no obligation to start a new lease. So in that sense, it's not a must fund.
Yep. And what happens to the computers at the end of the lease? They're not bought for $1. They're turned back in. Am I correct? Or can you describe that?
Yeah,
No.
so they rotate them out and then they technology is able to sell them back. And I think, Terry, I don't know if you have the exact number they get per machine.
It varies depending on the condition of the machine.
Yeah,
Some of the machines are not able to be sold, of course, because they are no longer viable because of damages or whatever. Some of the machines they are, and we do use those to replace machines. We use the funds we gain to replace machines that are damaged or destroyed in the course of the year.
Okay. So that sellback does not reduce the cost of a 3-year lease. It basically is
No.
funds used
right.
to potentially replace something
Replace-
prior to its
that's
end
our-
of life.
To extend the life of
Right.
something, yeah.
Replace and repair.
Okay. And so all that to say, kind of working up here, the skid steer, I believe that's a 3-year lease,
Correct.
in which case
Right,
I hope you
well,
would show that as, year 1 of 3, because that's a $57,000 piece of equipment.
Okay, yeah, and actually all the bus and the 2 vans are also year 1 of 3-year leases.
Correct.
Just for consistency and clarity, I want to make sure everybody understands that.
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions from the audience? Okay, keep going. Thank you.
Okay. If you want to do the next slide, please, Deirdre. So again, just summarizing, the level services budget, the 4% increase from FY 21, $17,173,131. The critical needs that we identified would amount to an additional 2% increase at $369,722. And the warrant articles we just discussed would be at $252,944. If you want to do the next steps, again, we continue to adjust as the picture becomes clearer for revenues. Town meeting in May, and then final approval in June. And again, I'd like to thank you all for listening to our school budget presentation. I'd like to thank Terry for all his work getting all this together. Also in our office, Jody Cleary, Kathy Villani, Becky Laverne, and Shalene Volpe worked very hard to get all this stuff together. You know, we appreciate the town's support in, you know, providing us with resources that have resulted in our students and schools being recognized statewide, nationally, and internationally.
Thanks, Bob. Just to keep us rolling in the sense of time, Deidre, could you go to slide 19? And that's the FY 22 critical needs. I want to just, I think we've discussed the warrant articles between Mr. Mulaney's presentation as well as Mr. Barry's, but this is, as far as I know, kind of the first time that we've looked at some of the above service level or new budget requests.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to
down, yeah, you want to go down a little.
Sorry, I wasn't prepared to do that.
All right.
All right.
Keep going.
It's still a little down. It's after these two, I think.
Yeah, it's after the next one right there.
Yeah. Yep.
And so those are budget requests. I just wanted to draw the committee's attention to these so that if there's questions about budget increases, this really is the peel back of that 369,000 increase. Any questions at all?
I do, Mr. Chair, being a first time here. I used to see before that someone would say, okay, pick the three that you need the most. No,
Took the question out of my mouth. Go ahead, if you wouldn't mind.
no, I don't know how
prioritizing
many,
or-
how would the number that it is, Pete, you know, but
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
rate
no, it's
them?
always,
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think part of it would depend on, you know, maybe how much money is available. You know, we haven't ranked them 1 through 8. I think the first one on the list, continuing that literacy study, would be our first choice. You know, if there were $20,000 made available. Beyond that, I think if there were, you know, if we were given information that, you know, there were $70,000 available, then we'd look at, you know, maybe the math specialist at Clyde Brown or the Clyde Brown full-time music teacher. The way we've been describing them is, you know, it's 1A, 1B, 1C. They're all critical. And should we have the opportunity to get some items on this list, you know, what's a priority today, March 31st? It may be a different priority May 1st, you know, depending on how things are progressing.
Bob, I would ask that you do prioritize these just in the event that there's not all of the, just in the event that there's some fine tuning that happens out of your control, that could happen between now and town meeting, that you're prepared to answer that. And then the other question, I'm sure probably Craig maybe he's about to say something, but some of these are budget requests and some of these are non-reoccurring, non-capital requests.
Yeah.
I believe, for instance, the literacy study, uniforms, I think those are the two that are jumping out at me, maybe the
Well,
SSO and
well,
rostering.
Yeah, actually, the uniforms would be a cycle, that like $12,000 doesn't replace all the uniforms. It would replace, maybe one season.
Sure.
And then, and much kind of like what we do with the computer leases, the uniforms.
Yeah, there's
have
a
life.
there's a
of 4
lifespan to those
years.
things,
Yeah,
thank goodness.
yeah.
Yeah, my only comment, Mr. Chairman, was going to be that we have received it ranked before, which is helpful, and also partial funding options. And I'll just use it because I can do the math pretty quickly. If a half a math specialist was viable at $33,435, that would be good to know. If it's an all or nothing expense, then that's also good to know. Because sometimes, if funds do become available, and there's exactly 20,000 and literacy study is your first choice, then it's pretty clear where we'd probably lean. But if 53,000 became available and the math specialist was your second choice, is that enough to get us halfway through a math specialist, or do you need the whole thing? So just don't answer it now, but just what can be split, what can't, and those are the, that's how we've done it before. And as Pete said, what's a warrant, what could be a warrant article and what would have to be budget item, because the uniforms could be a warrant article. I mean, it's just, you do them on cycle when you can afford to, but otherwise just a little more data, because towards the end, if things move quickly, it'd be helpful to have the school committee have considered that and be able to answer the questions very quickly as to what the priorities would be.
Mr. Chair.
Craig, I'd like to, 1 second. Craig, I'd like to pose a question to you and maybe to, I see Mark Conroy on, that, under the 4% model, we're talking a 4% increase and there it is. So the likelihood of not being able to fund these things presumably is low. Would you agree or disagree with that?
It depends on where the revenue side comes. First off, at 4%, we can probably fund the base budget with no trouble. If the select board also comes in with a 4% increase, there could conceivably be funds available after the fact, after the funds are used. I don't know where the final number is. Carol and I looked at it a few weeks ago, but it's a changing number. It's very elastic at this point. But as we get towards the end, it'll firm up more. But as we get a number, there could conceivably be additional funds available. Then the question becomes, do we fund extra budget? Do we fund capital? Where does that money go? And that's what I was getting to early in the meeting. Seems like days ago now, but hours ago when we were talking about additional capital items. If any of that available funds become available, it'd be nice to have the opportunity to be able to consider additional capital items as well. In fact, my personal preference is additional capital over budget increases, because additional capital is a one and done in a budget you're living with for the foreseeable future. But that's my opinion on it. But that's why I think that if the select board comes in at their 4%, first off, I'd commend the schools for coming in at 4%. I don't see any indication that'll be a problem this year. If the select board comes in significantly higher than 4%, it shouldn't impact on the school's 4% request. We would just have to weigh the pros and cons on whether that's affordable and whether we agree with that. And if there's a desire to put a little bit more towards the school, because, if the select board came in higher, that would be the discussion I think we'd have to have.
Okay. And thank you, Craig. I think I cut, and I did mention Mark. Mark, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I guess I was just going to ask, is as the discussions move forward and as numbers firm up, it'd be as helpful to have the communication continue that we have some of that information, because to Craig's point, we can do a rank, but knowing a dollar value some of those positions, yeah, adding, an extra, a 0.2 instead of a 0.4 may work, but knowing the dollar value or some type of range may help alter a strict prioritization. It may be maybe the $67,000 position would be number 2, but if we know the number is 40 and we could knock off 3 things for the 40, that may be more valuable. So I would just ask that, as we already have done through this process, making sure everybody's aware kind of what funds may or may not be available, and if they're going to alter decisions or how they impact decisions would be great.
Okay, thank you. Did I cut somebody off earlier? Okay. Mr. Mullaney, anything else for us?
That is all. Just thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't get us back on schedule.
No apology necessary. It's just fine. And I appreciate, everybody appreciates your time. As well as, I'm sure you're aware, Terry's participated as others have in the other committee meetings, and we appreciate their support for, coming to talk with us, Capital Planning Committee and others. So thank you very much.
That's been very helpful for us.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you. And next item on the agenda is warrant discussion. I'm gonna flip it over to Mike, and if you could give us an update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I will not be able to get you back on schedule, but I will try not to extend your out of schedule any further. So, and to try to do that, I'm just going to touch upon the changes to the warrant since your last meeting.
Mike, should we open the article list?
Probably.
Or do you think we should be in the draft warrant?
Probably, if you could, if Deirdre has the draft warrant, I'll just highlight the numbered articles and we could go to those. So I just want to let the Finance Committee know that I believe on the Select Board agenda for next Monday, they have an item to approve the warrant. So this time next week, you should have a final warrant in front of you, approved warrant for your review and discussion. I think we're pretty close to there. I think there's just a few articles that need a little bit of work on the language. So I'm going to start with Article 1, which we have filled in the unpaid bills. Again, the total there is only $572.91. So that's a pretty small budgetary item. And that'll be, and I think Carol's still on the line too. So Carol, you can correct me, but I believe that's going to be paid for out of free cash.
That's correct.
Okay. The next article is Article 15. So just a couple things on this article. This is the capital article. And just to briefly talk about the background of this in relation to other capital items. On Article 15, we have here the capital items that do not involve an initial borrowing or a lease. Anything involving an initial borrowing or a lease is a separate article because it requires a 2/3 vote and it needs a special authorization. So here in Article 15, we have 6 items. We've got the school committed bus leases at $89,999. The committed computer leases, the school at $46,600. We have the committed police cruiser leases at $34,932. And then we have 3 water enterprise fund articles. The first is the DeAngelis Wells PFAS plant design wells Part B for $200,000. Just to make sure the Finance Committee is aware, the town through the DPW department applied for grant from the state for Part B of the plant design for $197,000. And we're happy to say that's been approved by the Commonwealth. So we will be getting a grant for that amount. But this is essentially Part B, which takes us to 100% design of the PFAS treatment plant. So that's $200,000.
Mike, I'm going to interrupt you real quick, and that's because I think you may have just misspoke or I misheard you. The grant was for Part A for
That's correct.
197.
What did I say? Yes.
I think you said Part B, but that's okay. Or
Okay.
I heard
No, the
Part
grant-
B.
You are correct. The grant is for Part A. So the actual funding requested here is for Part B of that design project at $200,000. And then that's from the Water Enterprise Fund. The next item is for the PFAS plant design Part A for wells 3 through 6, and that's $255,600.
Mike, is that eligible for a grant, or is a grant application pending?
We can apply for a grant for that, but it's somewhat unlikely since we've already received it for another plant, but we are going to apply to see if we can get any additional funds. So
Okay.
if we do get that, then we can certainly use that.
Okay.
But
And are Part B design efforts eligible for grants?
that's a good question. I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure at this point if they are. But
Okay.
I will discuss that with
Could
the
you,
DPW director.
these questions are really for the Springtown meeting discussion to kind of make sure that we convey, questions that could be asked and a good understanding from people voting. So if you could follow up with that.
Sure, we'll look into that.
Thank you.
The last item is the water systems response plan. And I actually have that listed. I had that listed on the warrant as 40,000, but it should be 30,000. So if folks want to just note that in the updated warrant when you get it, well, that'll be corrected on that. So again, the top 3 items are free cash. The bottom 3 items are the Water Enterprise Fund. So the total amount for all capital items in this article is $657,131. And as I had mentioned, there were a few items, capital items that are in different articles because they require special authorizations. Article 18 is the $23,300 for a new lease purchase for computers for the schools. And because that's a new lease, it does require a 2/3 vote. So I think it's a simple majority, but it should be a 2/3 for that item. So that's a separate item, as well as Article 19. That'll be a stormwater enterprise fund borrowing for the design and construction of drainage rehab at Village and Birch Streets, and that's $711,728. Any questions on the capital articles and items I discussed?
Not at this time by me. Anybody else?
All right.
Okay. I do have a
so-
question, but I'm holding a question that we're going to come back to, but go ahead.
Okay, so Article 20 is the article in regards to the Chapter 61 A Braun property. So we're still finalizing the language on that. But the select board did vote the other night to affirm that article will be on the warrant. So that will be on the warrant for the town meeting to make a determination on. The select board hasn't voted yet whether to recommend or not recommend the article, but they did decide that it is important enough for the town meeting to weigh in on.
Mike, was there any discussion of funding sources?
That would be a
Nothing decided?
borrowing. That would be a borrowing within the current debt cap. So that would be a general fund borrowing, but it would be within the current. So it would not be an exclusion. It would be
But
within.
would
the
it be
current
in
budget.
totality of borrowing, or would it be any community preservation funds?
I believe at this point
they-
they're looking for a borrowing from the general fund.
Okay.
And the last two articles I wanted to touch upon was Article 27. And again, that's a proposed pilot for a solar project, which would be at the Clyde Brown Elementary School. We'll have that language finalized in the next day or two. And then just want to note in Article 29, we do have an amount listed there of $40,000, but the finance director and I are reviewing that article to see whether or not that much funding is needed at this town meeting or not. So we're reviewing that. So that may change between now and Monday. And that's really all the changes that I wanted to note tonight. Be happy to answer any questions that the Finance Committee may have. And I know the Finance Director is on the line as well, if you have any questions for her.
Ask a question.
I'd like to just go back up real quick to the Stormwater Management Fund within Article 8. It's highlighted in red. Can you just give us a little insight on that real quick?
I'm sorry, which article is that?
It's Article 8.
Talking about
and
the
it's the
consent article?
Stormwater Management Fund for 10. Yes.
Okay, hold on. That's our standard consent article.
Are you
Kira, can
talking
you
about
address that?
paragraph, are you talking about section 3 authorized revolving funds?
Stormwater Management Fund for 10,000?
Right. Is that what you're talking about? Pete?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm physically looking at the spreadsheet of, I can go to, I'm not in the warrant document itself,
Okay.
but there is something on Article 8 that's listed as the Stormwater Management Fund for 10,000.
right.
And it's
So
not
that-
intuitive to me what that is.
Right, so that is in the event that engineering fees are needed for the planning board or one of those other areas, similar to what they do with the planning board. A developer gives the money and pays for engineering study. So if there were an engineering study that needed to be done for somebody regarding the stormwater, they would pay the funds, the money go into this fund. It's a revolving fund, and then any
Okay.
expenses would be paid out of that.
Okay, so the part that I was missing is to how the funds come about, and I think you just covered it. If somebody's proposing something and there's a fee, there's a cost to mill it. Essentially, the fee is borne by the proposal or by the proposer who puts money into it, and we are actually creating the fund to accept those funds.
Right, and then any expenses would be paid out of that fund.
Understood. Okay. I get it. And then Article 11, we did talk about that. I understand what it is. I would like to get a volunteer, specifically either Kathy or Jim Borgman, to see if one of you wants to take on that particular article.
Mr. Am I on here? Yeah, Mr. Chair, it's, did they vote on this, Mike?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
so the Community Preservation Committee did meet last week to have a discussion of this. They didn't take a formal action. They had decided they were going to take a tour of the building. They have a meeting scheduled for next Thursday evening at 8 o'clock. No, I'm sorry, next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. That's April 8th, where they're going to discuss this issue again. So they have not taken any formal action on it. They had a number of questions and want to do some investigation before they formally replied as to whether or not they were inclined to, be a part of this project. So they have not taken any formal action yet, but I would
Mr. Chair?
recommend.
Oh.
I would recommend with whoever from the finance committee may be taking up the article, they may want to either, take part in that Zoom meeting or at least have the opportunity to watch it online.
Thank you.
Go ahead, go ahead, Kathy.
If I might, I attended and I believe, I don't know if Erin's on, attended the CPC meeting last week. And it was, the CPC informed the board, the select board, who was also, all of them were there. So it was a meeting that the CPC would not contribute 100% of the funds for this rehabilitation, and that the board of, the select board would have to come up with some sort of funds to be included in this. So that's what I was asking, Mike, if the select board has in fact voted to contribute anything to this, because
The board hasn't taken that vote yet. I'm certain they'll be discussing this article at their meeting next Monday. And they will, will have to take some action at that time to determine, if they can proceed with anything for this project at this upcoming town meeting.
Mr. Chair.
thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that for the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I serve on the permanent building committee that studied this, commissioned the study, and have attended all the meetings on that. Or not all of them, I missed a couple, but most of the meetings on that. I would like to take that article only because I'm pretty well versed in the whole process that we went through the whole thing. And I'll attend the CPC meeting to bring up to speed on the latest to the funding side of it. But I was in the process from the inception.
Okay.
It'd be a low learning curve is what I'm saying.
So unless there's, yep, no, I appreciate you doing that. So unless Kathy or Jim say they absolutely have to do it and they could use you as a good source of information, I'll defer to you and let you have it. Jim or Kathy, silence means it's going to Craig. Deirdre, please note that Article 11 is going to Craig.
I don't know if I just won or lost, but either way, thank you.
I have, yes.
How did I know?
We won, and it's win-win, Craig.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, back to you.
So I don't have any further items on the on the warrant. Like I said, I think it's the intention of the select board to approve and sign the warrant at their meeting next Monday, and that's where we stand at this point. If there are any additional questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
I have some, but I'll wait in line, Mr. Chair.
You're top of the line. Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm questioning Article 17, Mr. Chair, through to you, to Mike Kaczynski. There was some discussions at your Monday meeting, Mike, that it seemed like a majority of the select board wanted this 50,000 increase. Is that to be, I know you went from a easy agenda on April 5th to everything going on it from the meeting on this past Monday. Is it 50,000, or is that going to be, is it flexible?
That I will say that is still up for discussion, and that may change on Monday evening. It's certainly possible.
Okay, and then one other question, and this would be for the town also, on Article 26. Mike, do you think you can have someone from the DPW or the assessor's office put some flags up or red tape? Where is this property?
Well, it's landlocked, so you wouldn't be able to see it from the road.
Well, there's just a general guide as to what part of Acorn Street it is, even if you say Article 26 is this way.
Mike,
yeah.
Could you supply us just a map for
Sure.
our meeting
I will
materials
get
next week?
There you go, thanks.
I'll forward a map showing it to Deirdre tomorrow, so she can forward it to the committee.
Thank you. And if there's any background, just be prepared. I know that there was questions as to why the particular proposal was made and what was the intent, if you could just be prepared to discuss that, because obviously looks like it's gonna end up on the warrant, and we'll help, let's see, who we helping out with that? Jody, Kathy, 26, looks like Jody. I could be wrong. Okay, okay, I do not, unless, I don't think we need to vote. In fact, I don't think it'd be prudent to vote on any of these since they're all draft articles at this point. So but we certainly are nearing the point at which we'll start voting on these. So I want everybody just to, the reason that we assigned articles, maybe, I don't even know if we did it early, but earlier than in the past. I don't know that we did that, but the reason I wanted them assigned is so that people can be doing some homework, making some phone calls, sending some emails, so that they are prepared to do what they need to do for town meeting, as well as help us be prepared to vote on these as they come up. So with that said, any last discussion on the warrant or the draft warrant? Let's see, before I get too far, Kathy, you had provided a letter to, I think, Deirdre, or both to the Finance Committee and to the Select Board. I did take the opportunity to read it. I'm not sure if everybody else did. I believe it's linked in our meeting materials or in the email.
I did not put it on the website or the meeting
Okay,
material.
so it's in the email, right?
Correct.
Let me
Mr.
just
Chairman,
real
there's
quick.
nothing I wish to discuss further. I'm the type of person that on planned events like this, I tend to put my thoughts on paper and let them speak for themselves. So I'm just calling to attention some of the concerns that I have.
Okay, that's fine. That said, then I really just want to draw everybody's attention to it and make that given that it's a letter addressed to the Finance Committee and the Select Board, the Finance Committee is all of us. So please take the time to read the memo, which Deirdre provided us in email, and I'll leave it at that.
So, and then again, Mr. Chair, for future reference, when someone wants to do a memo like this, does it go through to Deirdre and then to you and you decide, or I don't send it to everyone individually, or a member wouldn't?
I honestly don't know if there's a protocol. I mean, you can certainly write a letter to anybody you want. It's up to us to handle it appropriately. Given that this particular letter is addressed to the Finance Committee, it's been made available to the Finance Committee, and I don't plan to post it to the website. Deirdre asked earlier today by email. We can discuss it since it went to all of us. I don't plan to post it, and I understand, I understand what you said about it. Just want to make sure everybody knows that it's there and they have an opportunity to read it. Okay, so back to the agenda. So now we're on to policy and procedures. Forgive me, I can't remember if last week I was looking at my notes and I stopped. I don't take as good a notes when I'm doing the speaking as I do when others are speaking. I can't remember if I said the deadline for comments was this week or next week. I thought I said next week.
No, Mr. Chair, you said this week with a vote next week.
Okay, good. Is everybody in violent agreement on that?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so your comments, please send them one way or another. There's been an offer to not everybody has a scanner. We'll take them any way you can get them to us. So if that's screenshots via text or email, please send them to Deirdre and myself. We'll compile them and get them to Jody. I'll give you an extension that happens by Friday of this week if you haven't done it already. And a vote will be, we'll disseminate that material, and a vote will be taken on Wednesday, our next meeting. Any comments or questions on that?
Now I'd come ready to discuss it, but I will now type them. It's a much better way. Keep us on schedule, keep moving.
Yeah, I think it's more
Yeah.
efficient if we have the comments in writing than
Absolutely,
discussion.
couldn't agree more. I take it away.
They don't have to be typed, Craig. You can handwrite them, as long as it's clear.
I can't handwrite into my email. I've tried that, it wrecks the screen.
Okay,
So I am.
okay, all right. And like all votes, there will be discussion next week. So if there's things that don't necessarily rise to the level of discussion now, if anybody has a discussion point on the policies and procedures, they certainly can bring it up. But we'll have more discussion on it prior to a vote next week. Okay, none heard. Oh, I heard a murmur. Any old business, new business? The one thing that I'll bring up is that it's been discussed amongst the tri-board chairs or chairs of the three bodies that make up the tri-board, that we hold a tri-board meeting prior to town meeting. As I have already said, I'm in favor of that, but I did want to solicit inputs or let you know that I would like for your inputs. You can either email them to me or I'll bring it up one more time next week. But I ask that you email them to me so I can consider them and send inputs to the other chairs so that we can discuss whether there would be a tri-board and when, we have to deconflict with the schedules. There's a lot of meetings, and my input yesterday when this conversation was held was I'd like to limit it to an hour with an agenda that we stick to. None of us are looking for extended meetings. Not that, again, it's valuable time, but I want to use your time efficiently. So.
Pete,
Yes.
so I'm not sure when you're planning on scheduling this, but there's kind of a time limit here, so.
Yep. It may be tagged onto an existing meeting that's either onto hopefully a short meeting, one of our shorter meetings that are upcoming.
Which would be
or
next week.
Okay. Well, that's too short. I think that's not going to happen in terms of time frame. So I don't know, Deirdre, I honestly don't know when it would happen, and I certainly would have to consult with the others before that decision's made.
Yeah, I have a request, and that is that someone would come and speak to that pilot solar issue, which I don't think we've heard anything about yet. So if it is going to stay on the warrant, we need to have some information on it.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just want to note that certainly in that project, I know that Mr. Wigan and Mr. Weiss have been working on that. And certainly, I think probably at your next meeting, I could ask Mr. Weiss to join you if you'd like to hear more about that item.
Please.
And Mr. Wigan is on the line now, so I don't want to preclude his comments if he wants to, but I've kind of.
I can come hang out again if you'd like me to as well. So.
Well, we're gonna take this as an official request. We would like you to come back next week and bring Mr. Weiss with you.
Okay.
He will be coming next week.
Okay.
Great.
Done.
Thank you. Any other warrant items that we see on there that we haven't heard from? Audit number 13. Board of Assessors, I think we've done that one. Capital items, tree pruning and removal.
Mr. Chair, is that, ask Mike if that cannabis article, is that staying?
Is that the delivery service?
Yeah,
I believe that is
Go ahead, Mike.
staying. Yes, I believe, I have no reason to believe that that is not going to stay on the warrant.
okay. I'll have to
Who
check
would be,
with, yeah, I'll have to check with the somebody that I know on the planning board that might know. I don't think they've had a meeting discussing that yet. So that's why I asked, because it seems it's gonna come down to the wire.
Right, so I mean, we have not heard, not received any requests from the planning board to remove that article. And we'll certainly be in touch with them, but yeah, I encourage you if you know, you
Mike?
have, yes,
Mike, can you just invite somebody from the zoning bylaw? And whether they come or whether they're prepared to discuss it speaks volumes about whether or not it should be voted on by us or by the town. So just invite them, just because we can't lose time on it. And you know, they might be Zooming from the same room, but if you would just extend the invitation.
certainly.
And let me just add, Mr. Chair, that if a bylaw doesn't get in, then I think the select board was considering a moratorium on this, because some sort of town statute has to be in place for this, or they can go willy-nilly around town with the cannabis and goodies. Thanks.
Waiver of town building project permit fees, authorization. And I think that's it for new requests for people to join us for next week. So it would be zoning as well as the Mr. Wiggins and Mr. Weiss.
Pilot.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's see.
And Mr. Chair, I
Yep.
didn't know if under old business, if, do you ever have an opportunity for the liaisons to speak or something? I mean, I already spoke to the issue about the Lansing Mills building. And
Right.
I just wanted to share that, you know, some money's going to be needed from the Board of Selectmen, because all the members were, I'm not a voting member, but the voters were adamant that the town has to show something in return to get, they're asking that of a lot of people that are coming, groups that are coming before the CPC now, to show some of your own funds. Thanks.
Right, right. Kathy, you just reminded me kind of some old business that we were going to talk about committee representation. And I'm remiss, I did not spend any time on that, but we'll make sure that we get it into the policies and procedures document. So I'm putting that on as an open item for me, and we'll talk about that next week. With that said, we're going to move on to minutes approval. There are minutes from the 10 March meeting that have been posted.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Jody.
I move that we accept the minutes of March 10th as written.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes from the 10 March meeting. I do show that everybody was present, and so we can take a vote on it. I won't do a roll call vote for all. Anybody in favor, please say aye.
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 Any nays? And any abstentions? Okay, Deirdre, please make record.
Excellent job on these, Deirdre,
Hmm.
as always. It's a lot to keep track of. You did a great job.
Okay, we are running along. I encourage you, any of you, if you felt like something was missed, or you have something you want to bring to the table or discuss offline, not as part of a public discussion, you just email me, please. And I want to give your, catch up on your time. So I won't delay this anymore. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. Oops, a second, Jody.
It's been moved and seconded. We will adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Good night.